All right. Good morning. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Innu Cree, and Dakota peoples, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Neil Harden. I'm chairing today's panel. With me are Robert Kraus and Bill Moretsky. The assessor today is Matthew Barakas and Mackenzie Omishinsky, and the administrative personnel is Zachary Mohan. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment role in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparison of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by council and is independent of it in the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the applications of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions the applicant may have and the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live stream recorded and will be part of the public record. We'll be hearing items 1 through 6 on our docket today. Mr. Mohan, please affirm the assessor's and applicant's testimony.
Of course, Mr. Chair. I'll start with Mr. Brokus. So, Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Matthew Brokus.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Omachinsky, please state your full name.
Mackenzie Omachinsky.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. And Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
Trevor Smith.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may be seated.
All right, so the first property on today's agenda is 150 Transcona Boulevard. So, Mr. Barakas, you can begin.
Mackenzie's going to be presenting. I'm just here to help with questions and any other information you guys might need. So Mackenzie will do the presentations today.
Okay, go ahead then.
Okay, thank you. This is file number 42-4032, roll number 040072611505, address 150 Transcona Boulevard. The roll year is 2025. The reference date is April 1st, 2023. The assessed value is $42,648,000. The classification is 20 residential 2. The number of buildings is 1. The number of stories, not available. Actual year built, 2022. Effective year built, 2022. Number of suites, 177. Indoor parking spots, 80. And outdoor parking, 134. We'll go on to the next page. No sales history for subject property. And we'll go to page 3. The number of units, there is 13 bachelor units, 48 one-bedroom units, 104 two-bedroom units, 12 three-bedroom units for a total of 177 units. The average monthly rent per unit is $1,555.12. The gross potential rent is $3,303,075. The vacancy rate is 2.6%. The expense rate is 36.3%. 0.37%. The net operating income is 2,047,101. The capitalization rate is 4.8%, and the estimated market value rounded is 42,648,000, with the market value per suite at 240,949 and 15 cents. We'll go to the next page, which is the rent comparables. The parcel use code for all comparables is Res App Apartment. The effective year built for the comparables is it ranges from 2017 to 2020. For comparable 2, there is 1 bachelor unit. For the range for comparables for 1-bedroom units is 0 to 42 units. For 2-bedroom units, it ranges from 36 units to 56 units. For 3-bedroom units, it ranges from 0 units to 22 units. And the average monthly rent per unit for comparables 1 to 4 ranges from $1,277 to $1,659. Then we'll move to, sorry. Okay. Then we'll move to the next page for the capitalization rate evidence. The following is a sample of actual sales that took place during the reference period. The purpose for showing these individual capitalization rates is to illustrate the accuracy of the model and substantiate the model-derived capitalization rates. They are not meant to be comparables specific to the subject property. And then we'll move to the next page. This is capitalization rate evidence from the city. And then we'll go to the next page, and this is the Municipal Act excerpts. And then we'll move to page 8, which is a graphic for Winnipeg multifamily top sales transactions.
Read the sale price per square foot.
Okay, and so we'll read. So for the sale price per square foot range is. The sale price range is 28,700,000 to 41,980,000. And then we will move to the next page, which is it's a permit issue date of 4/12/2022. The type of work is construct new apartments. And it is construct new 6-story, 177 unit, 17,124 square meter multifamily dwelling with 2,702 square meters underground parkade, exterior parking lot, landscaping and amenities. And then we'll move to the next page, and it is a aerial view of the subject property. And then on to the next page is a description of 150 Transcona. And that is my evidence. Thank you for listening.
Okay, if we just have a caution here, the use of permits, we're not doing a cost approach, so the permits are of little value, as well as we're not using a direct comparison approach, so the price per square foot is of little value to the board as well. So thank you for that. Mr. Smith, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a few. I guess the first one is, on our docket today, we have 2 properties built by the same developer side by side, virtually at the same time. The next one is 120 Transcona. It's essentially the sister building to 150 Transcona here. And I see that there's a recommendation on that particular property. Is there any reason that there isn't one on this particular property?
Well, I mean, we're not presenting 120 Transcona that hasn't been read in right now.
No, but it is on our docket. We will be dealing with it next, so it's simply a matter of the order that they were placed on the list, so.
Well, it's a more of a matter, we can cross that bridge when we get there, because I'd have to open up
Okay.
their income and expenses, so. 120 Transcona. We have actual income and expenses prior to the reference date for that one.
Right.
We don't have it for this.
I guess my question, and it's always hard to phrase these things, right? But
Yeah, I get it, yeah.
you have information from virtually the same building built at pretty much the same time in the same location. And it's very transferable across to this building, and yet we're not looking at any recommendation on this property. I was just wondering why that wasn't taken into account.
Well, I know that's not within the contents of my brief here for 150 Transcona, so you actually can't ask me questions on that.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'll ask them in the next property, then I guess we can do it in
Yeah,
that.
if you want to talk about 120 Transcona, when 120 Transcona comes up, I'd ask the panel to remind the applicant.
yeah, I would agree.
Okay,
That's not relevant to the valuation of 150 Transcona.
okay, fair enough. We can certainly do it in that manner. Looking at the capitalization rate evidence that the city has compiled on page number 5. So when I look through this, majority of the sales that the city that you have presented fall below 5%. And then when I look at page number 6 and outside of taking into account the city of Winnipeg's range, so 4.75 to 5.45, when I compare that to the major commercial brokerages ranges, seems to fall well below what the brokers are saying. Is there any particular insight you can provide on that?
In terms of the broker's rates?
No, not the broker's rates, but why the city's rates are so much lower than what the main experts in the field of selling multifamily in the city are stating for cap rate ranges.
Well, I mean, I can't speak for what the brokers do, but I mean, for instance, I've had colliers here at the Board of Revision, and I've seen their reports, and it actually says what they do is they'll take the NOI from the year following the sale, not the information that was actually on the table prior to the sale. So that's like an incorrect way of doing things, because that's like retrospective calculation, and that's not what we do. So that's not something I would put weight on. I'm not sure what CBRE does, but their low to high is 4 3/4 to 5 1/4. Even on low rise A, it's looking like they got a 4.5. So, and Cushman and Wakefield, they're that 5, 4 3/4 on the low end as well. So I actually don't think we're all that different in regards to the cap rate for this property, and maybe like kind of how it extends to the rest of the docket. The most applicable cap rate sale by far is, if you follow me to page 5, is 2390 McPhillips. It's a newer property sold in October of 2020. It is the most recent one that went through land titles with 3 years stabilized income and expenses. It generated 4.71. So on this property, we are sitting at 4.8. I think we're in line with the data that I reviewed.
So thank you for that. So your comment with regard to formulation of the cap rate. So you're strictly looking retrospective in what you're doing. You're not looking at it as a buyer would look at it when they're purchasing a property.
Well, I mean, I do see if it was purchased and then they took out a bunch of permits to renovate after, because then it would draw the situation into question whether it was purchased for the income in place at the time, or if it was it has to be an arm's length sale if they bought it to divide it. So I do look what happens after, but I'm not using information that didn't exist on the table at the time for the vendor and purchaser were negotiating.
And typically in multifamily, oh, we've lost.
They should be signed, just the TV flashes. Yeah,
Typically in multifamily, do we see net incomes increasing on a year-over-year basis?
Typically, yeah, we do. Yeah, typically.
So when the buyer is acquiring the property, they're aware of what it's produced, but they're also aware of what they're anticipating to come, correct?
Right. That's why when I do my stabilizations, I always use the most recent potential income, like from the most recent total year prior to the date of the sale, and then I'll stabilize 3 years of historical expenses because expenses do fluctuate.
Okay, Mr. Chair, you had indicated no weight is being placed on direct comparison information. Is that correct? I don't need to discuss that, do I?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Those are all of my questions for now. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Moretsky, questions?
On, excuse me, on page 4, the heat and rent line down below. There is nothing in there for the subject in terms of whether it's included or not included. My question is, where is that value for heat then captured in your
That's a good question. I'm not sure if the heat is included in the rent or not. I'd have to go digging through our notes. But I don't have that information in our brief.
Okay, fair enough. You don't have to dig in. Cap rate. Yeah, just going back to your capital rates chart on page 6. All of those in the multifamily are the same for the city of Winnipeg. I just my question is your number of 4.8 is very close to the 20th percentile. What would be the reason for that rather than somewhere in the middle?
Yeah. So this one is a newer property. It's built in 2022. So there's a range of years built in the universe of properties in Winnipeg. Condition, size, suite count. So a lot of these factors the model takes into consideration. So because this is on the newer end of the scale, we're finding it closer to the 20th percentile. But there are caps that are lower than this, we're finding. So I really feel strongly that based on 2390 McPhillips that we're kind of on the money here with the cap.
And you're singling out 2390 McPhillips for what reason?
If you follow me to page 5.
Yeah.
So in my chart, there is year built and effective age. So a lot of these buildings, and you can see number of suites as well, they're older and or smaller. For the docket today, what we're looking at is predominantly newer built apartments that are on the larger end of the scale. So these larger apartments, they don't have as big of a pool of potential purchasers as a smaller, newer apartment where like a few friends maybe could pull their money and buy one. When you're starting to get into this, well, not starting, but like well before the $42 million range, you're dealing with institutional investors. So that's why 2390 McPhillips, I wouldn't even really consider the other sales to be relevant, to be honest.
You weren't able to find other sales similar to 2390 McPhillips, newer ones that had had their multi-story, or
Yeah,
that's the only one that you were able to find.
so there was 333 Ward that we've talked about for many cycles back in 2016 that transacted on a share sale. And we did have the information, and that was a 5 cap back before. And because there's not like a lot of these don't transact through land titles. They're done through like share sales, and that's why I included that slide from the real estate board on page 8 to show on a per unit basis what they were selling for. This is what the real estate board was telling the people at that presentation that day. And I know you're not looking on a direct comparison, but this is like secondary support. It's like a test of reasonability. We're at 240. These ones range from 250 or 260 to 270, and you can put whatever weight on it you like or take that for what it is. I'm not doing a direct comparison approach here, but it's like a reasonability test. So yeah, not a lot of people build giant apartments and then sell them right away.
Okay, I have no further questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Kraus, any questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Okay, just on that latter point, these 3 multifamily sales, were any cap rates derived for these sales?
I wasn't able to derive cap rates because these are newer sales and we didn't have the information.
Okay. All right. And with regard to your comparisons on page 4 then, um, the subject is, let's say, the largest of the apartments that's there, and I guess has the quite a mix of units, whereas some of them appear to be more oriented towards the larger units. Um, would that make a difference, either the size or the suite mix make a difference in the average rents?
Yes, it definitely would.
Okay. And yeah, the comparison number 1 seems to have the lowest rental rate, and it's got, I guess, almost even break of 1 and 2 bedroom units, with a few 3 bedroom units thrown in. Um, would Well, I don't know. I don't know what I'm asking here. Uh, just thinking out loud. Um, I guess nothing arises from that. All right, Mr. Smith, you can begin your presentation then.
I do have one follow-up question as we did get into discussion of these sale transactions, if I may, Mr.
Sure.
Chair.
Go ahead.
So the, as you said, you presented the information on page number 8 as background information, I guess, tested reasonability. Did you interview the participants in the sale transactions for the properties that are presented there?
Nope, couldn't get an interview with them.
Okay, so for the first property, then, are you aware that the purchaser of the property, these are townhomes, and the purchaser of the property bought the property with the intent to convert them to condos and sell them as condominiums on the marketplace, and subsequently was not able to do that, and hence paid an over market value?
I mean, we have it in our system still as townhouses. We don't, there was no change made, so I wouldn't be privy to some sort of the conversation you're referencing right now.
Okay, so the city's not aware of that detail then?
Well, it's never changed.
It's not changed, they're still condo, they're still, they were built and designed as townhomes, and they continue to be operated as such, but they were purchased with the intent to convert them to condominiums for individual sale, thereby getting a significant return to the investor above what they would be as operating as townhomes. The city's not aware of that detail.
No, I don't, is that in your evidence?
That's my only question. No, it's not in my evidence, it's in your evidence, and I'm questioning you on it.
Just this substantiating your comments in regards to the potential of condo conversion.
It's a direct conversation that I had with the vendor of the property, who is a client of mine.
Okay,
All right.
Questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then, Mr. Smith, you can begin your presentation.
Okay, thank you. So 150 Transcona, new build apartment. Yes, it was built in 2022 into 2023. They didn't actually get their occupancy permit for the property until December 4th of 2023. That is when official operations began for the property. As you'll see, this same owner and developer built the sister property immediately adjacent to it, that being 120 Transcona, slightly in advance of this. You'll be able to see the direct comparability of one to the other in terms of location, size, build out, amenities. All of the details are extremely similar. So let's get into the subject property. Again, built and completed in 2023. We have a total of 177 units, 13 of them being bachelors, 49 one beds, 104 2 beds, and 11 3-bedroom units. It is new build, it's quality development. The exterior photos are there for you on page number 4. The site is prior to construction, obviously, as shown on page 5. But the location is shown for you on page number 6. In the Transcona area to the west of Plessy, obviously. Let's move into the valuation itself. So the rental rates for the subject property were established in that time frame for year-end 2022. So you would be looking at average rental rates of $1,443. So slightly more than what you'll see for the 120. That being because again, the units are slightly different mix, slightly larger, etc. So they're close, but somewhat higher than 120. We account for that obviously in our valuation. So the actual revenue at year end of 2023, post reference, obviously, was only a half month. So obviously there's nothing to rely on there. And we're not using post reference information. So if we needed to use other projections with regard to rental rates, well, we would go to the sister building at 120 and look at the rental rates that were there in that time frame. We've given you the CMHC stats as well as other new build properties in the marketplace for comparability. Basically, the gross potential rental income is well supported by our market evidence that you see on page number 9. Very few bachelors being built these days, obviously, but the other rents mirror exactly what we're seeing in the marketplace, supporting the projected rent for the subject. Now, again, all of this is theoretical because they weren't in operation in 2022. Taking that into account, do they have parking? Yes, there is parking and there is storage. So in order to project effectively the parking and storage income, we did look at the sister building and their revenue for those particular sources. And what we did in order to project revenue for those is look at the same proportion of parking revenue to gross rental revenue in order to project the parking revenue as well as storage. So they're done in the same manner. So we're accounting for those sources of revenue as well. This is all summarized on my page number 17. Skipping forward, vacancy. So we have a building starting operating in December of 2023. It is a new build. It has high rents. So it doesn't, when we look at the standard CMHC market vacancy stats, they take into account the whole universe of multifamily in the marketplace, so they don't tend to pick out a select type of property such as new build higher rental rate properties. So when we look at properties that are renting for above $1,300 per month. In the CMHC chart at the bottom of my page number 10, you can see that indicates 1 bedroom vacancy was 4.3%, 2 bedrooms at 3% with an overall average of 3.3%. And moving forward to my page number 11, this is again CMHC vacancy stats by year of construction and bedroom type. So if we look at the most recent construction, 2005 plus, subject obviously falls into that. When we look at vacancy for 1 bedroom units, it's 4%, 2 bedroom units at 3.2%, and an overall average of 3.4%. Now, add into this, we also have bachelor units as well as 3 bedroom units, and that will add to that vacancy risk as well. So subject property obviously had was fully vacant in December 2023. That doesn't need to be taken into account, obviously, but the important piece to take away here is that new built, higher rent multifamily properties have greater vacancy than the standard market. So we've applied a 3.5% vacancy rate to the subject property and indeed to the other new builds that we're looking at here today. Let's move into the expense allowance. We only had 1 month of operation, again, post-reference in 2023. So in this case, we have deferred to the City of Winnipeg's parameter of 36.37% in estimating the effective gross income. Move forward into capitalization rates. And we certainly do have a different difference of opinion with regard to this particular subject. What I will do to start out with is direct you to my page number 16 and the second last paragraph here. This is a critical component that needs to be taken into account. When we look at the valuation date of April 1 of 2023 and the time period immediately preceding that, we have a very dramatic change in interest rates in the marketplace. So we have interest rates rising, Bank of Canada interest rate rising from 0.5% in the spring of 2022 up to 4.75% as of the valuation date of April 1, 2023. So that is a 4.25% lift in interest rates from the Bank of Canada with in the time frame leading up to the valuation date. Now, what effect does this have? Well, obviously, if you are looking at acquiring a property as of the valuation date, you're looking at a dramatic change in what the mortgage lending rate will be to you. Obviously, mortgage lending rates are higher than what the Bank of Canada rate is. So if Bank of Canada is at 4.75%, you're typically going to be looking at, call it 2%, roughly higher than that. So you would be 6% plus in terms of the lending rate that you would typically see. So intuitively, that's going to have a dramatic effect on what one would pay for a property as of the valuation date. If your cost of borrowing is going to go up by, call it 4%, 2%, whatever the number ends up being, that's going to have a dramatic impact on your net operating income, obviously, or on the income, the ultimate income to the owner once mortgage is paid out, which obviously has a dramatic impact on your on the return that is generated from that property. So in the marketplace, as of the valuation date, you're looking at buying a property and your cost of borrowing has changed this dramatically. That's going to dramatically shift how you look at the purchase of an investment on the market. You're going to pay less for it in order to protect your return at the rate that you need. And that's obviously going to shift the capitalization rate up significantly as well. So there's a direct correlation between interest rates and capitalization rates and the value of properties. This is not me saying this. This is proven theory and is well known in the marketplace. So as of the valuation date, mortgage lending rates would shift dramatically, as would the capitalization rates. So let's skip backwards quickly into the market evidence. The city has relied very heavily on one sale. Now, in both appraisal and assessment practice, you need you need to be relying on more than one sale in looking at doing a fair evaluation. One sale does not make the market. And indeed, 2390 McPhillips is in dispute with regard to the actual capitalization rate that it did transact at. If we look at my chart here, I did receive newer information in recent time with regard to this sale, which is included in this brief, and the capitalization rate that was determined was 5.25% for 2390 McPhillips. Now, that is the most recently built, largest sale that's transacted in closer proximity, 2020, to the valuation date. So I understand placing weight on it, but again, we can't rely on a single sale to indicate what the market is. Now, whether it's 4.71 that the city indicates, or 5.25%, or somewhere in between that the panel determines, there is a shift from when that transaction occurred to the valuation date, without question, based on my commentary with regard to the interest rate environment as of the valuation date. Now, if we look at the other sales, yes, none of these are, pardon me, none of these are of the same age, typically with regard to the build of that property, or of the same size necessarily. That's because most of the market doesn't transact at the upper end like this. So what we have done is shown you a broad spectrum of transactions in the marketplace and what capitalization rates are produced for those individual properties. So,
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, I do not know what document we should be looking at. Where are we?
Page 13 of Mr. Smith's brief.
I apologize. We're on page 13.
Okay, capitalization rate, is that what you're still talking about, or?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you, sorry.
No problem. So if we look at the sale transactions there, some of the more sizable ones are our first two, 65 units each. Obviously, pardon me, a little bit older than the subject, built in 69, but obviously renovated since that time. Sold in 2020 at 5.25% cap rate each. 2390 obviously is there. We have 100 Southview, which was a bit of an anomaly. It is a townhome, but again was essentially purchased with intent to convert to condos, which subsequently has not happened as well. That being 148 units. We have 215 Edison transacting in 2020 for 68 units at 5%, 5.01. 2391 Portage Avenue, number 14 there, 57 units, 2019 sale at 5.7%, etc. And then we have a few more recent sales at the bottom. They are all somewhat smaller, but they are in that range of 4.9 up to 6.5%, with the balance of them being in that 5 to 6% range. Pardon me. Looking further into the brief, we look at two of the main commercial brokerages that participate in the sale of multifamily in our market. First one being Colliers. What I've done here is give you history of their Canada cap rate report for Winnipeg, specifically for multifamily. That being 2018, 2020, and 2023. Those being the three two prior cycles and the current one. So when we look at their Canada cap rate report, they are stating essentially stability in the marketplace of 5 to 6%. So 2018, 5 to 6%, 2020, 5 to 6%, and then 2023, they're also indicating 5 to 6%. Now, they have subsequently come out with a correction to this, which I didn't have the opportunity to include to this, and they're indicating that their report was put out in error and didn't take into account the mortgage lending issue with regard to April 1, or rather to the time frame that they're referring to here. And they've increased their capitalization rate range from 5.5 to 6.5% for the relevant time frame, that being April 1, 2023. Now, flipping forward to page number 16, we have Cushman Wakefield and their Q1 2023 Canada cap rate survey. I will state that Cushman does significantly less business with regard to sale of multifamily in our marketplace than does Colliers. But looking at their information, they are indicating a range of 4.75 to 5.5 for high rises and 5 to 5.75% for low rises. And again, I would suggest that they're probably not taking into account that shift in the marketplace. So when our typical range is 5 to 6%, and we have a mortgage lending environment that has been dramatically shifted upward, directly impacting capitalization rates, that's obviously going to have a direct impact on what market participants will be willing to pay. So we have used a capitalization rate of 5.5% to reflect this as of the valuation date. This is summarized on my page 17. So if you look at the rental income, this is the exact rents that they would receive. As of the valuation date, we've projected both storage and parking, and we come to $3,295,339 in gross potential income. Using 3.5% vacancy rate, which again is related to the age and more so the rent that's being charged for the units. 3.5% is very much supported by the market evidence and is what they will end up experiencing typically in the market. So we use 3.5% vacancy rate, the expense allowance, given the lack of information as it's newly built. We deferred to the city's expense allowance, capping this at 5.5% gives us our final value of $36,790,000. Now, you look at this, our projected rent average is $14.43, which I would ask you to take into account when we look at the next property. That is my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, questions, Mr. Baracus.
Okay, if we can go to page 13, would you agree that 2390 McPhillips is by far the most comparable cap rate sale?
I would say that it's the most comparable cap rate sale, yes, but it again is only a single sale.
Okay, thank you. How did you calculate this rate?
The rate was calculated based on the actual revenues and expenses following standard appraisal methodology.
Okay, thank you. So why did you apply 5.5% to a newer property?
Well, we just discussed that quite a bit, but when you look at the time frame in which the assessment period is based on, that being April 1, 2023. This property transacted in 2020 when interest rates were essentially at their lowest ever in the marketplace. So significantly better financing available to purchasers at that time frame, which would drive a lower capitalization rate. Outside of that, again, we don't rely on a single transaction in determining what the appropriate cap rate should be.
And then for 2390 McPhillips again, was this property not 5% last night when we went over this chart?
As I indicated when we were discussing it, I did receive further information with regard to the sale following that. I also don't remember seeing you here last night, but beside the point, Mr. Barakis was there. As I indicated in my commentary, I did receive additional information which we reviewed, which did indicate that the true capitalization rate was 5.25%.
Okay. What newer information did you receive that you are speaking of?
The newer information was with regard to the operations of the property itself, which had an impact on the net income for the property.
Okay, thank you. Those are our questions.
Sorry, I was on mute. Mr. Kraus, any questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Mr. Moretsky?
Yes, on your vacancy analysis, can you point me to the page?
Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Maretsky, I should do that as I was moving forward. So vacancy is on my page number 10.
Number 10, okay.
So the standard market vacancy chart from CMHC is at the top. The chart at the bottom of page number 10 is done by rental rate range and bedroom type. So you're looking at $1,300 plus in rent. And then on page number 11, it gives you vacancy by year of construction and bedroom type. So again, looking at the newest construction level.
Okay, so if I just preface my question, then this vacancy analysis would take into account a wide range of ages of apartments. Would that be correct?
It does. So just to clarify, so the CMHC chart at the top of page number 10 is the entire universe of multifamily in the city. You look at the bottom of page 10, it's again the whole universe, but broken down by rental rate range and bedroom type. The subject property has upper end rents in the marketplace and accordingly has higher vacancy. And then the chart on page number 11, it breaks it down by the year of construction. So they have breakpoints in terms of how they've analyzed vacancy. So the subject property would fall into the most recently built category there, 2005 plus.
Okay, I guess maybe I wasn't clear enough maybe in my question, but I guess what I'm getting at is, would a newer apartment have, this one is very new, would a newer apartment typically have a lower vacancy rate than one that was 5 or 10 years older?
No, not necessarily. I have a number of clients that have new build apartments. What what they find in many cases is that people will move in and be excited to move into a new property and move out at the end of their initial year as financial considerations take over. So there's that initial look at moving in, but they do have greater turnover because of the financial commitment.
So, the market out there then, typically, renters or prospective renters would not prefer to live in a newer apartment. They wouldn't be more sought out after than an older one. It doesn't matter. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that they have higher vacancy and that their turnover and vacancy is greater. There's greater rents to be paid in a newer property than a typical older property, and that does impact directly on the vacancy. So whether they're new or not, they do have a slightly increased vacancy over the standard market.
Your arguments with respect to the interest rates, isn't any hard data on that yet, on that effect. Would that be a correct characterization? Because typically it's based on historical data. That's how capitalization rate is calculated in these studies. Is that correct?
So I want to make sure that I understand your question here. So by hard data, I just want to understand what you meant by that.
Well, I'm talking about hard historical data. That's what usually these capitalization rate studies are based on, right? What has actually sold and what has been the actual NOIs.
Yes.
It's not a speculation in any respect. It's based on analysis of data. Would that be correct?
That is correct. And so to speak to that, what you're in looking at
I'm not saying, yeah, I'll just maybe rephrase. I'm not saying that you're incorrect in your argument about the effect of interest rates. My question is, is it speculative, a speculative argument though that has merit, but you don't really have hard data to back it up.
Right, I understand your question now for sure.
Yeah.
So the theory is sound. It's been proven out in the past. So if we look at shifts in interest rates in past times, the theory that I'm discussing is directly borne out. But if we look at the time frame that we're looking at, what happened when you had the dramatic uptick in interest rates was it had the effect of essentially shutting the market down in that nobody was willing to buy at the interest rate, that mortgage lending interest rate that they would be able to get on the market. So at the rates at the level that a vendor would want to sell. So that's directly showing you that the value that vendors had in their mind for properties was over market. So is there lots of evidence to back that up? No, because the market shut down. People weren't buying properties in that span of time. There's very few sales that transacted in that lead up to the valuation date.
I have no further questions. Thank you for that.
Okay, and I have no questions that haven't been asked and answered. So, do you wish a summation, Mr. Assessor?
Yeah, I'd like to do just a quick one here. So,
Okay.
I mean, when we're looking at what's going on with this property, it's predominantly like a cap rate issue. Like we're pretty close. So for a big one like this, where we're within 25 grand on the NOI here. So we're about $5.5 million apart or so. Trevor has a valuation of 207 a unit. We're at 240 a unit. The recent top transactions, not the townhouse, were around 265 to 270 per unit. It was built for 271 a unit. At 241 a unit, I don't think we're overstepping our grounds here. That's just the smell test. That's my summary.
Okay, Mr. Smith.
Well, I guess in responding to that and in my summary, I would state that we are using the income approach and not the direct comparison as is standard for this property type in assessment in Manitoba. We're not looking at direct comparison, but if we were to look at direct comparison, which we're not, these properties, we don't have sale dates on them. I suspect they're probably not in, they're either earlier in 2022 or something of that nature. And more so, we don't know what capitalization rates were used or what the rental rate structure was. Maybe they generate significantly more revenue than the subject property does, et cetera. It's just not appropriate to take those into account in that manner. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your presentations. Let's take a break until 10 after 10, and we'll come back and hopefully get the other properties done more quickly after hearing the cap rate arguments. Okay, welcome back. We will resume with 120 Transcona. So you can begin, Mr. Assessor.
Okay, thank you. This is file number 24-3885, roll number 0400726420. The address is 120 Transcona Boulevard, the roll year 2025, reference date April 1st, 2023. The assessed value is $40,989,000. The classification is 20 residential 2. The number of buildings is 1. The number of stories is 6. The actual year built is 2020. Effective year built 2020. The number of suites is 171. Indoor parking 82 and outdoor parking 102. We're doing a recommendation to reduce the assessment to $38,135,000 to better reflect market value. We'll go to page 5 for the calculations, as you can see. And then we'll go back to page 2. There is no sales history.
And you can see, you can stop and just go to page 5.
Okay, yeah.
You can just gotta write down the potential rent.
Oh, okay, okay.
PGI.
Okay, my apologies. So on page 5, the recommended calculations, November 2022 potential rent is $2,802,180. The outdoor spots is 91,800. The indoor spots is 123,000. The PGI is 3,016,980. The market vacancy is 2.6%. The vacancy amount is $78,441.48. The EGI is $2,938,538.52. The expense ratio is 36.41%. The expenses is $1,069,921.88. The NOI is $1,868,616.64. The cap rate is 4.9%, and the recommendation then is $38,135,033.57, rounded to $38,135,000.
Stop.
Okay.
Okay, and I'll note that the NOIs are very similar, so it's basically a cap rate issue.
Right.
Um, okay, is that your presentation?
We'll pause, see if he goes for the rec or not, and then we can blow through the rest of it quickly.
Okay, Mr. Smith, how do you feel about the recommendation?
Well, we appreciate, the city, making the recommendation. We don't think it necessarily reflects market value.
Okay, so then you can continue, Mr. Assessor.
Okay, thank you. So on page 2, there's no sales history for the subject property. And we'll go to page 3, the number of units. There's 11 bachelor units, 51 bedroom, 88 2-bedroom, 22 3-bedroom, for a total of 171 units.
Skip.
Uh,
we redid all this. We don't have to do it.
Okay, then we'll go down to page 6 to the capitalization rate evidence. The following is an example of actual sales that took place during the reference period. The purpose for showing these individual capitalization rates is to illustrate the accuracy of the model and substantiate the model-derived capitalization rates. They are not meant to be comparable specific to the subject property. We'll again look to 2390 McPhillip Street. And then we'll go to page 7, that is capitalization rates information. We'll go to page 8, it's the Municipal Assessment Act excerpts. Page 9 is the Winnipeg multifamily top sales transaction graphic. Then we'll go to page 10. That is a construction permit for the for 120 Transcona at $40 million. And then page 11 is just more information on 128 Transcona Boulevard. And page 12 is the rent roll, page 12 to page 15. And then that will be our presentation. Thank you for listening.
Okay, questions, Mr. Smith?
Mr. Chair, I would just ask that my questions from the first property be carried forward to the remaining properties. If there's anything different, I will bring it up.
All right. So that's all your questions you have then?
That is essentially all of the questions that I have with regard to this. Well, what
Okay.
now that we are on 120, if I may ask the question, just wondering why the look at 120 Transcona was not essentially carried forward, transferred in order to look at 150 Transcona in the same way as they are sister properties.
Yeah, this one has pre-reference date information.
Right.
The other one didn't, so
It's impossible for the other one to have pre-reference date information, but you have the same essential property next door to it. I guess that's my point.
okay.
Anyway, I don't want to belabor it. I just needed to fit it in at some point here. Now we're on the correct property. That's all of my questions. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Moretsky, questions?
Well, this was built in 2020, and when was it ready for occupancy?
Let me see here. Well, before the reference date, we have the most recent rent roll we have is on page 12, and it shows the leases are starting kind of mid 2022. So I mean, we could dig through our notes, but it looks like it's mostly occupied by that date. So they're either pre-leased or they're quite leased up at that point. So but I don't have an exact date, unfortunately, for you to get back to your question directly.
So this building was built prior to 150 then, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Yeah, so they just kind of went one after the other kind of thing?
Yep.
So on page 12, does this information show that this apartment block is completely occupied? Is that correct?
I mean, it looks to be pretty much completely occupied, or like operating around, like at the top of page 12, you'll see it's 98%, and it's got 3 future, but I mean, people move in and out during the year, and maybe there might be a month or 2 where a suite is vacant. So our market vacancy tracks with what's going on there actually right now. So it looks like it didn't take them too long to get up to speed.
Okay, but does this chart show that every suite in 2022 up to the lease start 22?
Yeah, like so right at the top.
At the time this chart was made, information that was entered in, does that mean that every suite had a lease? Yes or no?
Well, it looks like there's a future lease on unit 410, and there's a future lease on 516 at the chart at the top. It looks like they're hovering around 2% vacancy. So any building in Winnipeg is going to have somebody moving in and out, and there's going to be some sort of like maybe interim time when the place isn't leased. So that's why we don't ever apply 0% vacancy, because it's just not reasonable.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. So I'll take that as your answer. Then thank you very much. No further questions.
Okay, Mr. Kraus.
I have no questions, thank you.
I guess I have no particular questions then. So Mr. Smith, you can begin your presentation.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So 120 Transcona, this is developed and owned by the same property owner of 150 Transcona. It was begun in 2020 in the COVID timeframe. Obviously, there were disruptions in finishing it off. They didn't actually get their final occupancy until August of 2022. So they essentially began operations in the summer of 2022. To your question of is in the single month rent roll that the city has presented there, which I understand why to include it. No, it's not fully occupied. There were 2 or 3 or 4 units that were scheduled to be occupied in the future. Now, that's fine, even if it did have 100% occupancy at that point. What my point was earlier is that these buildings do typically have greater vacancy because of the level of rent that is required. So there's a honeymoon phase where it's brand new, everybody wants to move in. And then turnover happens typically relatively quickly to the degree that the CMHC stats support. So you would have to apply what a typical vacancy would be for these properties in the marketplace. And the typical vacancy for these properties is higher than the rate that the city has applied. So just wanted to cover those points off to begin with. So 120 Transcona, originally begun in 2020, completed in 2022. We have 170 units, 10 bachelors, 53 1 beds, 88 2 beds, and 19 3-bedroom units. So kind of the whole spectrum. You don't see too many bachelors being built these days, but they do have a few in this particular unit. Exterior photos on page 4. It is a well-built structure, obviously new. The site is shown on page number 5 during construction. And the location is on page number 6. Now you can skip into the valuation itself, beginning on page number 10. So I would disagree that we only have 10 capitalization rate as being the difference here. There is a delta between what the city has projected in their rec versus what the property actually produces. We ultimately, after analysis, come down to an NOI that is slightly higher than what the city has projected, but obviously the cap rate is higher for us than what the city has. I would also point out, so the model in this case for a property built completed in 2022 versus one completed in 2023 is making a cap rate distinction of 0.1%. Now, is that reality? I imagine that's based largely on age of construction. They're essentially the same at the same time. So the model should, if there's a distinction being made on 1 year of construction, I think that's somewhat informative as to how the model works. So, sorry, let's get back into the valuation itself. Page number 8. We have the projected rent revenue based on the actual rental rates, giving us $2,858,880 based on the actual rents in place as of the valuation date, for an average of $1,393. Bachelor's $990, 1 beds at $1,219 per month, 2 beds $1,493, and 3 beds at $1,703. CMHC stats are there for you. But beyond that, we have new build apartments on a chart on page number 9. These directly support the rent in place. And we have added in the parking and storage revenue for the property as well in our analysis. Moving forward to vacancy, same discussion as before. New built apartments, we're looking at 3.5% for the different bedroom types for both $1,300+ rental rate range, as well as the most recent year of construction with regard to vacancy. So the most recent construction, we have 1 beds at 4% vacancy, 2 beds at 3.2, overall average of 3.4. Very, very similar with regard to the chart with regard to higher rental rate ranges. So again, based on market stats, we're using 3.5% for the subject property. Whether the property is full at one initial point in time doesn't mean that they will not experience typical market vacancy going forward. So we need to account for it. That's what the market is telling us. The expense allowance, again, we don't have a full year of operation here, so we have deferred to the City of Winnipeg's expense allowance at 34.61%. Our capitalization rate discussion is exactly the same. I won't run through it twice. For all of the reasons already discussed, we have used a cap rate of 5.5%. This is summarized on my page number 16. So you can see how we've gone through our valuation. And this produces our final market value of $34,306,000. That is my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Mr. Assessor?
No questions, thank you.
All right, Mr. Kraus, questions?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Moretsky.
No questions, thank you.
Okay, and I have no questions. So thank you very much for this. Is either party wish a summary on this, Mr. Brodsky?
No, thank you.
Brockus, rather, sorry. Mr. Smith?
No, thank you.
All right, we will move then to our next property, which is 20 Cal Gardner Drive.
Okay, thank you. File number 24-3149. Roll number 040072546665. Address is 20 Cal Gardner Drive. Roll year 2025, reference date April 1st, 2023. Assessed values at 38,818,000. The classification is 20 residential 2. Then we'll go to number of buildings, 1, number of stories 7, actual year built 2016, effective year built 2016. The number of suites is 152, and then outdoor parking has 229 spots. We will be doing a verbal recommendation for this property. If you're able to pull out a pen.
Okay.
Based on the applicant's evidence. This is based on the applicant's evidence. So for 2022, the EGI is 2,852,623. This is based
Okay,
off.
could you give us that number again?
Yeah, 2,852,623.
623. That's EGI.
Yes, and that's
Okay.
based off of the December 2022 rent roll that is found at the last page, at the end of our brief.
Okay.
And then new expenses is $1,015,980.15. The NOI is $1,836,642.85.
Okay.
The new expenses are applicant expenses with newly stabilized 5% EGI management.
Okay.
And the model cap is 4.5%.
4.5.
Sorry, 4.85%. That's my mistake.
Okay.
And then the rounded recommendation is 37,869,000.
869,000.
And then
Okay.
we'll pause for the applicant to respond.
Yeah, and how do you feel about that recommendation, Mr. Smith?
Again, I appreciate the city having a second look at the property, but we don't feel it reflects market value.
Okay. So, Mr. Assessor, is there anything you wish to add to your presentation then?
Yeah. We'll go to page 3. The number of units. There is 103 one-bedroom units, 49 two-bedroom units for a total of 152 units. Then the average monthly rent per unit. Oh, okay.
So just go to cap rate chart.
Now we'll go. Okay, we'll go to page 6 for the cap rate evidence. The same as before. Also look at the 2390 McPhillip Street, and then we'll go down to page 7. It's capitalization rates information. Page 8 is municipal act assessment excerpts. 9, same as before for the graphic, and then 10 is a permit for the new construction at 27 million. And then we'll go all the way down to the last page, page 14. And that is the where we get the rent roll for December 2022. And that is our evidence. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Okay. Questions, Mr. Smith?
I have no questions, Mr. Chair.
All right. Mr. Moretsky, questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Kraus.
I have no questions.
Okay, so Mr. Smith, please begin your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So 20 Cal Gardner Drive. This is relatively recently built in 2016. It is pardon me. Sorry, frog in the throat here. It is also located similar location to the prior two in the Transcona area. And we are looking at property with a total of 152 units. This one is a little more conventional in terms of the split. It is 104 one beds and 48 two-bedroom units. And we can move forward into the property itself. We have photos of it beginning on page 4, being newly built. You can see the interiors of the suites as well as the common areas, pretty standard for what is built these days. Good quality, etc. Storage area on the bottom of page 9. The site is shown on page number 10. And location on page number 11. We then move forward into the valuation itself. So the gross potential rent for the subject property at year end 2022, based on the actual rents that they charge, was $2,894,568. Gives you an overall average rent of $1,587. And you can see the rental rate ranges there for the 1 and 2 bedrooms. And CMHC chart is there for you to review. And the rental rates are supported by the market evidence as shown on page number 14, these being other new build properties in that are comparable to the subject. We've also added in parking revenue for the property for 2022, which shown on my page number 14. Moving forward with regard to the expenses, the same exact information is there for you to see. With regard to this particular property, their vacancy was not it was a little lower than what we were seeing in some other new builds. So I didn't think it was appropriate to apply the higher vacancy rate. So in this case, we did defer to the city parameter of 2.6% in our valuation. Again, property specific. So let's move forward to the expenses. In this case, we had 3-year operating history to look at. So we did the stabilization of the expenses for you as shown on page number 17. So our stabilized amount is shown there for you. $1,012,272. So a little lower than what the city's rec is by about $3,000, and our revenue, our effective gross rather, is about $32,000 lower than what the city's effective gross is ultimately. So expense allowance, we do have the 3-year history to base that on. Our cap rate evidence remains the same, and we've used the same 5.5% capitalization rate as an appropriate rate based on market transactions and based on the April 1, 2023 date and what the situation with regard to lending rates was at that time, which would have obviously an upward impact on capitalization rates. So this is all summarized on my page number 22. So I'm looking at the city's rec here. Our effective gross is again about 32,000 less than what the city has. Our expenses are about $3,000 less than what the city has, and our NOI comes to $1,817,459, capped at 5.5, gives us a market value of $33,045,000. The addenda materials include the rental and the income and expense for the property. That is my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Mr. Assessor?
No, thank you.
All right, Mr. Kraus, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Maretsky?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Then we will switch neighborhoods and go to North Main, 2766 Main. Let me open the files.
No changes, thank you.
Okay. File number 24-3711, roll number 0500943120 address 2766 Main Street. Roll year 2025, reference date April 1st, 2023, assessed value 38,432,000. Classification 20 residential 2. The number of buildings is 2. Number of stories 6. Actual year built 2022. Effective year built 2022. 153 suites, 83 indoor parking spots, and 149 outdoor parking spots. We'll go to page 2. There's a no sales history for the subject property. And then we'll go to page 3 for number of units. We have 47 one-bedroom units, 87 two-bedroom units, 19 three-bedroom units for a total of 153 units. The average monthly rent per unit is $1,634.83. The gross potential rent is $3,001,548. The vacancy rate is 3%. The expense rate is 37.96%. The net operating income is $1,806,296. Sorry. Capitalization rate is 4.7%. The estimated market value rounded is $38,432,000. The market value per suite is $251,189.54. Then we'll go to page 4 for the rent comparables. All the comparables are ResApp apartments. The effective year built ranges from 2018 to 2020. The number of one-bedroom units range from 23 to 43. A number of two-bedroom units range from 31 to 121. And then the number of the three-bedroom units range from 8 to 14. And then the average monthly rent per unit for the comparables ranges from $1,506 to $1,587. We'll move to the next page for the capitalization rate evidence, which we spoke on before. And then we'll go to page 6 for the capitalization rates information. Page 7 is a municipal act excerpts. And then page 8 is a permit for the construction of new apartments. Declared total project value of $34 million. Page 9 is that graphic for the Winnipeg multifamily top sales transactions. And then page 10, we actually have from page 10 to page page 10 to page 14. There is a couple articles stating that this apartment actually has been bought for a $42 million from. Sorry?
The first paragraph.
Okay, so yeah. So for on page 10 here, the first paragraph, Marwest Apartment REIT has agreed to purchase the Prairie View Point property in Winnipeg from Ironclad Properties for $42 million. Now we'll go down to page 15. There are some pictures of the property, then some pictures of the interior of the property. And that continues to page 25. And then at the bottom,
Just the rent roll summary.
there's the rent roll summary. If we do, sorry, I can't
Oh, yeah. So the rent roll summary is from the December 2022 rent roll we got from the owner. And instead of posting the whole thing, we take up multiple pages and the lettering will be quite small. I just basically, you can hold control and zoom in and you'll see that they're reporting that they were collecting 250,133 in December. So when you multiply that by 12, you end up getting 3,001,596, which is pretty darn similar to what the model is cranking out on a potential basis. So I don't think we're overshooting the rents. That's our presentation. Thank you.
All right. Questions, Mr. Smith?
Yes, I do have a few questions. So just looking at your page number 3. So we have a property built here in 2022. It's a similar in size to the ones we were just dealing with, more peripheral location. The city here has a cap rate of 4.7%. Versus 4.8 and 4.9 for the prior properties built at the same time in arguably better area. Just wondering how that comes about.
The cap rate is assigned by the model, so I would think that it takes the location into account as well.
So it's suggesting then that this is a better location than in Transcona in a newly developing area.
Well, it does suggest a lower capitalization rate. It's a different kind of atmosphere. This one's across from Shooter's Golf Course near the perimeter. Well, south of the perimeter, but closer to the perimeter. So there is less commercial traffic going by. So that might be something someone likes. That might be someone might want to be more in the heart of the retail atmosphere. Ultimately, we're 251 per suite. So I think our value's okay.
Okay, so and then just on the same point, so the model itself, do we know how many sale transactions of new or very recent construction would be utilized in the model in coming up with these cap rates?
I do not know.
Would it be fair to say it would be very, very few?
Yeah, they don't, through land titles, they don't transact. We find that they go through like a share sale instead. Like 333 Ward, we didn't see it go through land titles. But the ownership did change via share sale. So it's kind of hard to find them sometimes. They don't go through land titles a heck of a lot.
Okay, so it'd be fair to say there's very little data supporting the cap rate for new build cap rates then, is that accurate?
Yeah, like for the big ones, for sure. And that's why we also kind of want to dig a little deeper into secondary analysis to kind of support our overall evaluation.
Okay, moving forward, and I'll have verbal rebuttal on this, but Page number 10 and the sale transaction of the property. And forgive me, I have to ask these questions. Did you have the opportunity to interview vendor or purchaser of the property and get the detail behind the sale?
No, I was probably gonna ask you some questions about that actually, because they're your client.
Yeah, fair enough. I have some rebuttal on that point, Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
we will finish your questioning first and then questioning from the panel, then you can present your rebuttal.
Okay, last question then, page number 25, so, projecting your rent, you've simply taken a 1 month, 1 month total and projected that for, to arrive at your estimate, in comparison to the model, is that right?
Well, yeah, because I mean, we look at comparables, but we also, I know this one wasn't like a full year because it was 2022. But it looks to me like if you zoomed in occupied units, it's like they're like 2%. So they're running at market vacancy. And I mean, if you kind of like pull into the article that's on page 10, it seems like the organization that acquired this property was speaking very highly of the apartment market in terms of how it's doing well and how their assets in their REIT are close to fully occupied and such. So they're just they're pretty happy with what they got here. At least that's what I'm reading.
Okay, those are all of my questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, questions, Mr. Kraus,
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Moretsky?
I have no questions, thank you.
Okay, I've got a question on your rent comparables. They all seem to be lower than what the model is producing for this property. How do they support the rental rate for this property?
That's a good question. And when we were looking for comps for this one, that's something we noticed. This is the newest. When you compare the subject to the four comps, I mean, they're all pretty new. Also, we've got we have 3-bedroom units, but so do all the comparables. So when I was kind of thinking, are we too high on this one? I dug into our system, and when we put these on, we also asked for like the rent roll at the time we put them on. So at the very end here, when you zoom in, December 22 year end, 4 months before the reference date, they're reporting like market vacancy. And in terms of they're reporting a potential rent of just over $3 million, and our modeled potential income is just over $3 million. So when I see that, I'm like, well, we're kind of on the money here. So I look at that, I give that more weight than the comps. So I'm like, okay, we don't have to change the rent.
Okay, now on the sale, do you know anything on the sale rate other than it was just in the newspaper somewhere?
No, like those don't go through land titles. We only have the information from when we reach out to the property manager to put it on. We just thought it was interesting the way they spoke so highly of the rental market and how they said they acquired it for $42 million. We don't know that. But I mean, I thought the board might find it relevant.
Okay, was it a share sale or anything like that?
I believe so, because it did not transact through land titles. That's why we don't have any recent sales in
Okay,
our chart there.
okay, thank you for that. All right, now, Mr. Smith, if you can give us your main presentation, how we'll do it. your main presentation, then questions, and then your rebuttal followed by questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So looking at subject property 2766 Main Street, it was developed in 2021, 2022, with the first partial year of operation in 2022 for the subject property. It is as shown on my page number 3, we have a total of 153 units, 47 one beds, 87 two beds, and 19 3-bedroom units. Photos for the property begin on page number 4. You can see some exteriors of the property. It is new build, it is good quality, obviously being built relatively recently. And if we look on page number 6, the site is shown to you with the actual location shown on page number 7. So this is an important feature, looking at where the property is actually developed. So as already noted, it is across from the Shooters Golf Course there out towards the Perimeter Highway on Main Street on the west-hand side. So well beyond the main developments in that area in terms of residential, as well as surrounding supportive commercial. You have to travel in order to go to any shopping, etc. So not as convenient in that aspect as well. Beyond that, we look at location in terms of employment centers, it's also peripheral. So the location does have an impact on the desirability of a property for rent, quite obviously. So looking at my valuation for the property, we begin on page number 9. And we do differ in terms of the gross potential rent for the property. So based on the actual rents for the property, the rents themselves, we have a gross potential rent of $2,788. Sorry, $788,968. This is taken directly from the rent roll, looking at the actual rents, adding them up and projecting them for the entire year. So this gives you an average overall rental rate of $1,519. Now, if you take that average and you compare it to the averages of the other properties that we've just been looking at that are also new build, you can see that it's definitely at the upper end in terms of the rental rate charged on average in comparison to those properties as well. So is there another 250,000 beyond that? Very unlikely. CMHC stats are there for you to see. And the supportive rents are shown for you on page number 10. Also all new builds. So we believe the actual in-place rents as of that time frame are appropriate for the marketplace. And obviously they're significantly under what the city has projected for the property. We've added in parking revenue for the property in our valuation as shown on my page 10. Vacancy calculation. Again, we have, pardon me, we have the same CMHC stats. And again, we have a newly built property with top end rents in the marketplace. So the vacancy for a property such as this is typically a little higher than the normal CMHC averages. And the city's calculation of, I think it's 2.6% or whatever it is. Actually, it may be different in this case. Pardon me while I make certain of what has been projected here. So in this case, the city used a vacancy rate of 3%, which is more in line with what CMHC is indicating for properties of this age and rental rate level. So we did, in this case, defer to the city's vacancy rate of 3% as it is supported by the evidence we presented there. Moving into the expense allowance. So we have a newly built property, 2022 being their first year of operation, partial operation essentially. So we don't have an entire year to base this on. Our year-end 2022 operating expense was $652,996, which is roughly, well, a little more than half of what the city's projection for the property would be. So not having the history for the property, in this case, looking at the ratio that the city has applied, we felt it was appropriate. So we've deferred to the city's operating expense ratio in arriving at our expense allowance, which comes to $1,047,970. What I will point out, subject property is new, but the property owners had significant repair issues during their period of ownership here. The sprinkler system was deficient for code and required a significant upgrade, which came to $24,000. Similarly, the plumbing system had elements that did not meet with code and required fixing. They also had a sprinkler line that burst as it was not properly insulated. This required $100,000 in repair. Beyond that, there have exterior envelope issues related to the exterior fascia, roofing and soffit, and they've had to spend $15,000 on that in that 2022 year. With some ongoing issues there. Final point, pardon me. The air conditioning units that were installed in the suites did not match their size. They were not large enough, and essentially they burned out quite a number of the units, leading to ongoing higher HVAC repair and maintenance over time. So while this is a new building, that doesn't mean that it won't have repair costs. And certainly with regard to this property, there were a lot of unanticipated expenses that popped up. So to move forward into the capitalization rate, all of our evidence remains the same. What I will point out for the subject property is that we have, as noted, a property that's on essentially the periphery of the city here. Your draw for that area is certainly more limited than if you're in a more central location or a more established area. There's, if you look at the location on my page 10, you can see that it's certainly not anywhere near as built up as more established areas of the city where you would have more of a draw for tenancy. It is less supported by surrounding commercial. It's just a less desirable location in general. Beyond that, you also have a bit of a different mix with 19 3-bedrooms in there as well. In any case, we have not increased our capitalization rate in the valuation, but I think it's certainly apparent that it would, at a minimum, get the same cap rate as the other properties that we were discussing. So we've used 5.5% in our analysis. My summary is on page number 18. And you can see the final market value comes to $31,141,000. The addenda materials simply include the INE as submitted to the city. And I am open for questions. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Mr. Assessor?
Hello, yes, thank you. I have a couple questions. So if we go to page 10, you reported the potential gross rents at $2,788,968 based on year-end 2022 at full occupancy. What was the source of this number?
The source of the number is the actual rents included in the rent roll. So if you go through the rent roll as supplied and look at each individual rent and add them up, multiply them by 12, it gives you the result that I provided. So it's directly from the rent roll.
Okay, so on the last page there, would you not agree that the potential rent income is for monthly is 250,133?
No, if you look again at that, you can see that the residential rent is $228,608.
That would be for occupied units, would it not? That would not encompass the entire potential of the property as indicated at 250,133 on the potential side we're looking at.
It does encompass all of the units of the property. If you look at the other things, you're looking at parking, additional parking, rent premiums, etc.
So like there's that line, it says summary charge, and then it says, the first line says current notice, vacant tenants, lease charges, 250,133. So that encompasses everything.
Well, as noted, it encompasses the parking, which is shown, it's broken out in that chart below. So if you go through the exercise of adding them up, it comes to what I'm stating there.
So like when you look, is this, okay. The chart at the bottom, it says res rent 228, and it's maybe a bit more clear in ours because yours is sideways. Res rent 228,608. Then it says parking 8,960. Parking RU 1,285, and then rent premium 480. That adds up to 250,133. December year end 22. So when you multiply that by 12, you get 3,001,000, not the 2.7 that you indicated.
So I'm not quite sure what the question is because we're looking at rent and not parking. I've accounted for the parking in my valuation, which you can see separately. So the actual rents come to the figure that I project, and that's at 100% occupancy, simply based on the rent itself. Parking is another matter, and we've included parking in the valuation.
Okay, let me get just so if we follow you back, you included 57,137 on the parking. But when we're looking at what they're reporting the parking at on a monthly basis, you go 8,960 plus 12,085. You're getting 21,045 on a monthly basis. Now, if you multiply that by 12, that's 252,540 extrapolated over a yearly basis. Does that Would that not indicate that the parking rate you would indicate in your workup on page 18 is understated?
I see your point. It may be a little understated. Yes, I would agree with that. Now, parking can vary significantly, so, yes, yes, to your point, it probably does underestimate somewhat what, the parking revenue would be, but, it's not, it's not clear that they would receive that whole amount. So, but I would agree with your points.
Okay, those are our questions. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Mr. Maretsky?
Just been asked and answered. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Kraus?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, and I was going to focus in on the parking too, but that question has been asked and answered. So thank you for that. Summation, Mr. Assessor?
Does the applicant have a rebuttal on?
Oh, yes, sorry,
Yeah.
yes. You're right. The applicant has a rebuttal on that. So, Mr. Smith, you can give your rebuttal then.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So with regard to the city's pages 10 through where it ends here. 10 through 14, I guess it is. Regarding the sale, we do have rebuttal. The purchaser of the property obviously is our client. And I have had have an interview with them with regard to the purchase of the property and the circumstances of it, etc. So bear with me. There's a bit of theory to go through here, but it is critical in understanding what has been paid for the property versus what actual market value for the property would be. So if we look at my page number 8, definition of market value. So the market value, and this is taken from the Appraisal Institute of Canada definition. Market value is defined as the most probable price which a property should bring in a competitive and open market as of the specified date under all conditions requisite to a fair sale, the buyer and seller each acting prudently and knowledgeably, and assuming the price is not affected by undue stimulus. Now, there is further text with regard to what undue stimulus encompasses with regard to a sale. So the additional information with regard to the definition of market value is the buyer and seller need to be typically motivated. The parties need to be well informed or advised. You need to have a reasonable time for exposure to the market for a sale of the property. Payment needs to be in Canadian dollars. And critically, this is the important point, the price must represent the normal consideration for the property sold, unaffected by special or creative financing or sale concessions granted by anyone associated with the sale. So looking at the subject property and the transaction that is noted there, outside of this, to start with, it is a share sale. And again, under Appraisal Institute of Canada guidelines, share sales are typically not to be relied upon as indicators of market value. Beyond that, and getting back to my main point here with regard to special financing, there is very significant special financing with regard to this purchase. So the purchaser was Mar West REIT. They bought it from Ironclad, Ironclad Company. They were the developers and owners of the property. And there's 3 points here with regard to special financing and terms. First point is in the late 2022 timeframe there when it was acquired, they were able to assume a very significantly under market interest rate. So at the time of acquiring the property, and these are round figures, not specific figures. He didn't give me, this was our exact rate, but he said the rate that they were able to borrow at was well below what the market mortgage interest rate would be for them to go out and buy it on the market. So in taking over the mortgage that was on the property already, they received the benefit of that beneficial financing, and this amounts to millions of dollars of savings over the period of the mortgage. So very dramatic impact on the transaction itself. As I said, they benefited very significantly by that market rate being roughly 3 to 4% under what they would see on the open market. Second point with regard to the special financing and or creative financing, the sale of the property came with a long-term CMHC insurance certificate, very high value certificate. So what this means is that the CMHC insurance certificate essentially guarantees to the lender that they are insured with regard to anything transpiring with the property. They will receive their payout. Any lender will receive payout of their mortgage under the terms of the mortgage as it was struck. So what this means is the purchaser of the property with this CMHC insurance certificate in place over the long term, which is I believe they had a 40-year amortization on the purchase of the property. Over that entire term, they will receive access to the lowest possible interest rates on the market, as lenders know that they're insured for anything going wrong with the property, that they will be covered and they will be made whole and receive what they bargained for when they lent on the property. This access to the lowest possible interest rates again adds up to millions of dollars of savings over the period of time of the ownership of the property and the mortgage itself, millions of dollars of savings. So again, dramatic impact on the transaction itself, and these are obviously taken into account by the purchaser when they're buying it. Beyond that, number 3, the builder was Ironclad, who is a merchant builder. Essentially, they build the properties, and in many cases they do transact afterwards. So they were the builder and the vendor. They provided a long-term warranty to the purchasers of the property such that they would not specifically be liable for certain set of problems that may pop up with the property. Now, that has resulted in some savings to the property owner already, but what it does is it guarantees them that they won't be laying out money on unanticipated expenses. Now, those expenses have popped up in this particular case for this property. And not all of them are covered under that warranty, not every single one. But it does provide, again, a level of comfort to the purchaser that they will not see any out of the norm expenses. So the sum total of this is that the purchase price is not reflective of market value, as the vendor is receiving a very significant bump in their return based on all three of these aspects with regard to the beneficial financing, the CMHC certificate, as well as the warranty. So the price paid was not based strictly on what the property was producing, but what the benefits of this special financing would provide to the lender. And that is directly taken from an interview with the purchaser of the property. That is my rebuttal. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Mr. Assessor, on the rebuttal?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Moratsky on the rebuttal?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Kraus?
No questions, thank you.
All right, now we get to summation. Mr. Assessor, you want the summation?
I think we're okay. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Smith?
No, I'm fine. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you for that. We'll take another 10-minute break here till 11:30 and then come back again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we shall resume then with 2600 McPhillips. So, Mr. Assessor, you can begin on that one.
Okay, thank you. File number 24-4037, roll number 0500943575. Address is 2600 McPhillips Street. Roll year 2025, reference date April 1st, 2023, assessed value 29,948,000. Classification 20 residential 2. Number of buildings 1, number of stories 5, actual year built and effective year built 2021. There's 124 suites and 184 outdoor parking spots. We'll go to page 2. There's no sales history for subject property. I'll go to page 3. For number of unit breakdown, we have 69 1-bedroom, 45 2-bedroom, and 10 3-bedroom for a total of 124 units. The average monthly rent per unit is $1,565.78. The gross potential rent is $2,329,881. The vacancy rate is 3%. The expense rate is 36.4%. The net operating income is $1,436,350. The capitalization rate is 4.8%. The estimated market value rounded is $29,945,000. The market value per suite is $241,491.94. Then we'll go down to comparables. All the comparables have a similar effective year built, similar breakdown in units, and the average monthly rent per unit, the subject falls within the range of the comparables. And then we'll go, we already spoke on the capitalization rate evidence, capitalization rate information on 6, and then the Municipal Assessment Act excerpts on 7. Then 8, as we already spoke about, is that graphic for the top sales transactions. And then on page 9, we have the rent roll totals with the calculation of 198,297 times 12 would be the 2,339,564 PGI reported. Also on page 9, there'll be pictures of the interior of the suites until page 12. And then on 13, there is an article in regards to the development of the property, and that is my evidence. Thank you for listening.
Okay, questions, Mr. Smith?
Just the one question here. And as I mentioned at the beginning, Mr. Chair, my questions for the initial property were intended to carry forward for all of them.
Okay.
I'm assuming that's, I think we covered that in the beginning, so I just want to make sure that those are still being taken into account. My question, I guess, is with subject property, looking at page number 9. The calculation that you have done with the potential gross income here is taken from the market rent as shown, 198,297, which is in the top line. Just wondering why for this property the rent was taken from there versus the chart below, which is indicating a different rent. Why it was done differently in this case versus the prior property? Not that I dispute the rent that you come up with.
Well,
but
yeah, for sure. Okay.
They're approached differently.
Right, okay, so for this one, you can see as of February 2023, they're still running around a 50% vacancy. So when you're looking at the lease charges here, it says current notice vacant tenants. It appears in that column, whoever did the accounting only included the tenants that were in place. When you look at the one in the next line over to the left, it shows the occupied units and the vacant unit potential. So I'm not sure why they did the accounting different, but it's kind of obvious enough where you can see what the potential gross rent ought to be, which also happens to be your potential gross rent.
It does, in fact, is the same gross rent. In this case, you haven't taken into account the parking, etc., which you did in the calculation on the other property.
Right, because in the summary here, it appears like that's like the in-place 50% vacant, where in the property previous, it was apparent that the accountant who did it that time included all of the potential in this box here. So it's more of a matter of them doing it different and us being able to tell the difference.
Well, there were we've already covered that. I guess I won't go into it in any greater detail. Those are all of my questions. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Moretsky, questions?
I do not have any questions, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Kraus.
No questions, thank you.
All right, then Mr. Smith, go ahead with your presentation.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the subject property, 2600 McPhillips Street. This is the Saatchi Apartments development. It is the first development of this kind by this particular ownership. This is the first one that they have done. Began construction in 2021, and they didn't receive final occupancy, and occupancy didn't begin until September of 2022. So that was the initial operation when the property began lease up. So relatively limited time prior to the valuation date of April 1, 2023. Now, the lease up of this property has been considerably slower than what you typically see for new build apartments on the marketplace. In direct discussions with the ownership, after a period of 6 months, they were sitting at roughly 50% occupancy of the property. Now, typically, a newer build will have a faster lease up than that. We still obviously have the vacancy issue for larger rent properties going forward for properties we've discussed, but lease up does tend to go a little bit faster than what we're seeing for this particular property in the marketplace. What I will point out with regard to the subject as well is the location of the property. Now, it has a street, or rather a street address of 2600 McPhillips, but it doesn't front on McPhillips Street. It's located behind a car dealership and the car dealership lot that fronts on McPhillips Street. Now, reason for this is that the owner of that particular land that it's built on is the owner of the auto dealership, and they took the opportunity to develop this particular parcel with a multifamily development. Now, so it's set back from McPhillips and has significantly low visibility with regard to pardon me, with regard to traffic, etc. on McPhillips. So different from your typical new build apartment where you have good visibility, just general knowledge of that apartment being out in the market from traffic flow in the area. So let's look at the subject property here, beginning on my page number 3. Again, originally constructed beginning in 2021, completed in 2022, occupancy beginning in September of 2022. We have a total of 124 units, 69 one-beds, 45 two-beds, and 10 three-bedroom units. Photos of the property begin on page 4. It is a new build apartment, so it is quality construction, etc. Pardon me. Bear with me for a few seconds here. And we can move into, as I mentioned, the site itself on my page number 6. So you can see the land that it was being constructed on. And it does sit well back from McPhillips Street itself, somewhat hidden. And the location is shown on my page number 7. So again, we're getting pretty far out on McPhillips, heading out towards the undeveloped areas. So again, you're in a somewhat peripheral location with regard to the location of the subject. Let's move forward into the valuation of the property itself. Looking at the income for the property, first revenue year for the property was year end of 2023. Based on the rents that they had as of the valuation date, as already pointed out by the city, we had a gross potential rent of $2,379,564 at full occupancy. This gives you an overall rent average of $1,599, which, if you compare this to the other properties that we were looking at, is a little bit above them. Certainly, definitely on the high end of the range for the average overall. The actual rents for the individual unit types are there: $1,369 to $1,481 for two beds, $1,625 to $1,722 for two beds, and over 2,000 for the 3 beds, as indicated. We gave you the chart for the subject property on my page number 10, giving you the comparisons of other new builds. And you can see the range of the subject property is slightly above certainly what the other new builds are indicating with regard to the rental rate range. That being said, these are the rents they're charging, so we have gone with that figure as the gross potential rent. We've added in parking and storage revenue. These are post-reference figures for the parking and storage, as 2023 is the first year of operation essentially. So there is no information to base those on outside of that. So we have used that data in our analysis. Looking at the subject with regard to vacancy, as I've said, the lease up of the property was taking considerably longer than what you would typically see for a new build apartment in the market. We have the same CMHC stats with regard to vacancy for newer build apartments and apartments that rent at the upper end of the rental range in the city. This is summarized on my pages 11 and 12. For the subject property, we have increased the rental or the vacancy rate. And the reason for that is, again, as stated on page number 12, property had considerably above the 3% vacancy rate. City model projects for the 2023 year, so end of 2023, at a total vacancy of $175,080, which is well above what is projected by the city. We have increased the vacancy rate to 4%, which is supported by the market evidence, but produces a vacancy well under the 175,000 that the property actually had at year end 2023. Expenses, page 13. Again, 2023 was the first full year of operations. We are unable to do 3-year stabilization because property wasn't operating prior to that. And typically what you will find in the first couple of years of operation is slightly lower expenses as the property is new. Therefore, we feel the 2023 expenses that we use are very unlikely to overestimate the expenses for the property. So we have relied on that data in our analysis. That gives you $997,661 as the expense for the property. Our cap rate argument, we've heard extensively. I've had discussions with this particular ownership group with regard to financing, etc. And they are out on the market and are certainly well aware that lending rates from commercial mortgage brokers are significantly higher as of the valuation date than they were in the year prior to that, which would impact their capitalization rate. We've gone through this in detail. I won't cover it again. We have applied the same capitalization rate at 5.5% for the subject property, based on the data that we presented to you already. This gives us our final market value of $24,555,000. This is summarized on my page 18. You can see the revenue that we project for the property is somewhat higher than the city's. The vacancy is also somewhat higher than the city's. But well under what they were actually at the year end 2023. The expenses are the actual expenses from year end 2023, giving you the resulting NOI and our final market value based on the actuals for the property, which are again well supported by the data presented and our discussion of capitalization rate influences. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, questions, Mr. Assessor.
Yeah, just one. On page 13, would you agree that the expense total in your workup is post-reference information?
I've already stated that, yes.
Okay, thank you. That is all.
Okay, Mr. Kraus, questions.
I have no questions, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Moretsky.
Yeah, where is that expense amount that you said was actual 997 661? Where is that kind of summary figure in any of your data here? Where is that figure lower down in your workups?
In the workup itself?
Oh, I
or-
see it there. I see it there now.
Okay, on
It's
page
very
158.
small, so I'm having a hard time.
Okay,
Okay, so that's for 2023.
it is. The property didn't operate until September of 2022, so there would be no year-end expenses at 2022 that would give you any kind of idea of what the expense load should be for the property. So we have presented that as the best information available.
So none of these are capital expenses included in that, is it? Like any additions that they made, even though it was new? Yeah.
No, there are no capital expenses included in that.
Okay. No further question.
Okay, with regard to the expenses then, I mean, we're obviously going to have to consider the use of post-reference material, but wouldn't the expenses reflect the vacancy as well? And if it was a normal vacancy, wouldn't the expenses be higher?
So 2023 was a full year of operation, so yes, to your point, if it had been operating for a while, the expenses might be somewhat higher than that figure, yes.
Okay, and again, what about the parking? Is the parking value as fully occupied, or is it actual income?
It is as fully occupied.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for those. Okay. Summation, Mr. Assessor.
No, thank you.
Mr. Smith.
No, that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. So we'll come to our last property in a little bit of a switch in tone here. 2300 NS. Okay, so
All
Mr.
right.
Assessor, you can begin.
That's what it is.
Okay. Okay, yeah, so it's file number 24-3480, roll number 0707556100. Address is 2300 Ness Avenue. The roll year is 2025. The reference date is April 1st, 2023. The assessed value is broken down into two because the property type is a nonprofit assisted living retirement residence apartments. So there is assessed value of 1,483,000 for liability taxable, and then 29,772,000 for under the liability S taxable school exempt. The classification is 40 institutional property. The number of buildings is 2. The number of stories is 1 to 3. The actual years built is 1963 to 2018. The effective year built is 1990 to 2018. This is a building that was built in multiple stages. The number of suites is 204, and then we have 42 outdoor parking spots. If you go to the next page, there's no sales history for the subject property. Then on to page 3, we have the number of unit breakdown. So we have 22 bachelor units, 164 one-bedroom units, 18 two-bedroom units for a total of 204 units. The average monthly rent per unit is $1,058.53. The gross potential rent is $2,591,281. The vacancy rate is 2.6%. The effective gross income is $2,523,908. The expense rate is 40.43%. The net operating income is $1,503,492. The capitalization rate is 5.05%. And then we have adjustment of $1,483,000. The estimated market value rounded is for the apartment is $29,772,000. With that $1,483,000 adjustment. And would I speak on that now? Or is
Oh, yeah,
through?
it's, yeah. The $1,483,000, that is the excess land. I'll take there's what this is an elderly and infirmed property, like it has a license. So as such, it's school exempt. On page 15, just jumping a little bit ahead, I could just show you the legislation on that. And so it does have a license. This property we have on file, so it does get the institutional classification and school tax exemption. However, it is to a maximum exemption of 0.81 hectares. So what that is essentially is the land encompassed in the property, the square footage above that 0.81 hectares. So that's the source of that. And we have some land comparables that Mackenzie will speak to as he continues on here with the rent comparables.
Yes, yeah. So we'll go to page 4. And there for the comparables are all Res-App apartments. The effective year built is just ranges from 1973 to 1974. The breakdown of units is similar to the subject property, and then the average monthly rent per unit, the subject property falls within the comparables range. And we'll go on to page 5. This is some calculations done for CMHC for assisted living. And then we'll go to page 6 and the combined averages for the CMHC zone year and building unit count. The average for those three is $1,078.71. And then the percentage of market rents would be 91.96%. Then we'll go on to page 8, where we'll talk about the land sale comparables. And then the land valuation. And we are at 18.8 for the net rate. Which yeah, so as you can see with the comparables, they are in or around the rate that we currently have for the subject property. And then yeah, we'll move on to page 9. There's just an aerial view of the property, and then they'll be on page 10 to 11. These are the comparable land sales photos, aerial views. And then page 12 is the cap rate evidence we've spoken on. Page 13, or next page, capitalization rate information. And then there's a municipal assessment excerpts on the following page. And then page 15 we already touched on. So we will go to page 16, which is the permit for the construction of the additional apartments for a total project value of 18 million. And then the next page is an additional permit for the construction of personal care facility. This would date back to 2003. That is a declared construction value of 250,000. And then there is
Okay,
on the
once
follow-
again, I will point out that the board puts no weight on permits.
Okay, sorry about that. Then we will go to page 20, and there's just a description of the operation. And then on 21, further information on that. And
Some pictures.
then there's some photos, interior and exterior on the latter pages until 25. And then 26 is the property and income expense questionnaire. And then that'll be our presentation. Thank you for listening.
Okay, questions, Mr. Smith?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just bear with me for a moment here. The land valuation that that has been done. This is again based on being over that break point of 0.83 hectares or whatever the figure is for personal care homes. Is that correct?
Yeah, for as per the legislation on page 15, that's why there was the additional value that as per the law needs to be fully taxable.
And looking at the comparables that that you have here for the subject property, so they range between, well, there's an upper end of $18.99 per square foot in Sage Creek for a little over 2 acres, and then we have $17.85, $17.24, and $17.69. Again, for Sage Creek, new build in Peguis area, etc. What is the value that's the per square foot that's applied to the subject?
1880.
Okay, would the comps not suggest a lower figure?
I mean, it's not enough of a difference where an adjustment could reasonably made. They all have the same zoning. They're all, they bracket the subject property in terms of size. Most are larger. But I didn't see anything stark enough to be able to quantify a difference that I could apply on a recommendation.
Okay, and with regard to location, would we consider Sage Creek as being superior or inferior to the subject location?
Well, it kind of depends on how far you want to be outside of Winnipeg in general. Some people like Sage Creek, some people don't.
Okay, those are all of my questions. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Mr. Kraus?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Moretsky?
How many hectares in total is the land that this is on? You have that figure?
Total land square foot, we have 166,027. Let me verify that on page. Oh, where is it? On page 8 says 166,027 for net area combined total.
And how many hectares is that?
Let me get Google out here. I don't know that off the top of my head.
You don't have the conversion rate in your head?
No, not as smart as I look. Okay, so that would be 1.542.
About half of it then is over the 0.81 hectare limit. Correct?
A little less than half when you look at the net area.
Yeah.
in
Yeah,
total.
okay.
Yeah.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Okay, and I have no questions. So, Mr. Smith, your presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So let's deal with that particular issue up front, I guess, the issue of the additional land area and the value ascribed to it by the city. So if you turn to my page number 28. Wait for everybody to get there.
I'm there.
You're all there now. So as already described by the city, subject property has 3.8 acres, which is over the 2 acres permitted under the Elderly and Infirm Persons Housing Act, as shown in the legislation they've provided there to you already. The point here is that this guideline is inconsistently applied by the city in the by the city assessment department, which leads to inequity in treatment of properties under the assessment system. So if we look at there are a number of examples, and these were just two that I saw. Examples of other Elderly and Infirm Persons Housing Act properties which have a license, which do not have the additional land value added to their assessed value. The two properties that I've included here, one is considerably larger, that being Concordia Village number 1 and 2. It is a nonprofit assisted living center, as is the subject that we're dealing with. It's located at on Molson Street there, as indicated. And then we have another nonprofit assisted living center, Cathedral Manor, en route de la Cathedral in St. Boniface. The first one is 11.9 acres, second one is 2.4 acres. Neither one of them has an additional land value ascribed to it, with of course the resultant tax that comes from that. So essentially, you can't select which properties you apply the rule to and which ones you don't. Certainly 11.9 acres is well above what the subject property is. De la Cathedral is more in keeping with the subject, and just a little bit over the limit, but essentially the system has to operate in an equitable manner, so you can't apply the rule to some properties and not others. In both cases, those are both nonprofit assisted living seniors facilities as well. That's point number one to start with. There shouldn't be any value assigned to that particular issue with regard to the subject property. So subject property itself, this is 2,300 nests. This is known as Metropolitan Kiwanis Courts. It's owned and operated by Metropolitan Kiwanis, which is based out of St. James, as a seniors nonprofit assisted living facility. Pardon me. It is one of the older ones in the city, having begun in 1963. And we can move into discussion of the details of the property itself. Much of the property was originally built in 1963. There have been recent additions to the property, those being in 2000 and 2018. So we have the original date and structure of 1963, an addition done in 2000, and then further addition done in 2018. So it's been built in stages over time. You look at my page number 3, you can see background of the assessment for the property. 2023 was appealed and was confirmed. We have obviously appealed that decision to the municipal board, and we're awaiting scheduling. If you look at the increase from 2023 to 2025, we're looking at an increase of over $5.3 million, 20.7% for a property
Okay,
that is
again here,
already
I would point out that we don't put any weight on comparison of assessments even between cycles.
fair enough. The information is there for you to review. We have a total of 203 units, 21 bachelors, dominantly 1 beds, 164 1 beds, and 18 2-bedroom units in the facility. Photos begin on the following page. I have inspected the property. These are all our photos itself. So you have some exteriors, front and back. On page number 4 and top of 5, then the dining room on page 5, certainly not as luxurious as you see in a for-profit center. Some more common areas on page 6, typical hallway in page 6, and then the suites in page 7. So the units themselves do not have functioning kitchens. You have, as shown in the photo on page number 7, typically you have a bar fridge, a sink, and some cabinetry. They don't want the tenants essentially cooking in the suites is ultimately the case, as meals are provided as an assisted living center. So you can see the hardwaring surfaces, the basic nature of it. We're not talking the same level of build out as you would see for a new build market apartment by any stretch of the imagination. You've got your vinyl plank flooring there. They're also designed with seniors' mobility issues in mind with regard to the bathroom fixturing as well as the open plan nature, doorways, etc. So from that perspective, they're not directly the same as a standard market apartment is either. In keeping with that, the units themselves are typically smaller than your standard market apartment of the same bedroom type, essentially. The photos speak to the property. They're taken throughout the property and give you an indication of what it is like inside. Obviously, part of the property is significantly older and more dated than some of the newer portions of it. So looking at my page 13 and the site, the most recent edition, the 2018 edition, there were 2 components to that. You have the right hand, so looking at page 13, the eastern or right-hand side of that photo, that is a 2018 edition, that L shape, T shape, not the whole T, just the end portion of it. And then they built a new dining room and recreation room type of facility and kitchen, etc., on the front of the property, which you can see kind of juts off towards Ness there in the middle of the property. And the rest of it is 1963, as well as the 2000 edition, which is on the west-hand side, from my understanding. Now, looking at the site itself, it essentially takes up the whole site. So is there the 3 point however many acres there? Yes, there is. And it's entirely utilized by the development itself. So location shown on page number 14 in the St. James area in the Silver Heights, just south, well, just on Ness. And we can move into discussion of valuation for this particular type of property. So again, we're looking at assisted living. It's not a market apartment, can't be directly compared to it. Our exercise essentially is coming up with what an appropriate rental rate level would be for a property such as this on the open market, what expenses you could expect for a property such as this, based on taking out any business expenses that they include in their presentation of income and expense to the city. And finally, how would that property be viewed by an investor in purchasing it on the market? So you have specially designed units for accommodating seniors. They don't have full kitchens. They essentially have a sink and a bar fridge. The layout is different. Demand for that type of property is obviously going to be lower than a typical market apartment on the open market. Looking at the valuation of the property, beginning on page number 16, as I've described, we are looking at an assisted living facility, which includes assisted living package, which would be your services such as your meals, various other services that are provided. So the actual rents that they pay encompass those additional costs. So we can't rely on the rents that they state for the property. When we reviewed the city's estimate for the property, we were overall in agreement with their estimate of the gross rental income. So we have deferred to them with regard to the income for the property. Looking at vacancy for the subject, pardon me. Our data is all there for review. It remains the same as before. We do have quite a number of bachelors here. And in reality, I think if you were to put this property on the open market as a standard market apartment and try and rent it, the layout and amenities of the units themselves would probably lead to greater vacancy. That being said, we have deferred to the city's vacancy rate at 2.6%. Let's move on to the expenses for the property. Now, this is an interesting point, and I believe we do differ from the city on this. We do differ from the city on this. So when you look at an assisted living facility, typically they have considerably greater common areas and amenity rooms, etc., than a standard market apartment. So you have a main floor that has a lot of additional space that isn't rented out. So typically you will see increased expenses for these types of properties. The exercise is to take out any extraneous expenses such as related to kitchen use, etc., and strip it back to the operating expenses that themselves. That's what I've done on page number 19. I've given you two tables, both of them reflecting the 2 years previous. We didn't have the 2021 year, unfortunately, so we have a 2-year history. The first table, we have included a standard management fee of 5% of effective gross income. Now, if you look at that column or that line, the actual property management was 262 to 277,000. Our stabilized amount is 126,195, inclusive of that 5% EGI. Now, that's the actual. So you can see their total expenses were $1,534,000 for 2022, up to March 31st, 2022, 1,540,000, so consistent for 2023. Our stabilized amount, 1,216,346, once adjustments are made. Our expense at the bottom of the page, we have removed the management expense entirely. And it gives you a total expense amount of $1,090,151. Now, discussion about this, obviously the expenses are higher than what is stated there. We've made adjustments to pardon me, to the professional fees. We've reduced them significantly. Office supplies, we've reduced them. The management, we've already discussed. So we've brought the actual expenses down quite dramatically by either 300,000 or 500,000 in each case. So those expenses are real. They are there. I would say the management expense is certainly overstated. And perhaps the professional fees should be considerably lower, as also stated. So we've made those adjustments. But the expenses are greater than what you typically see in the marketplace. Now, these are illustrated of the actual expenses of the property. But we have gone to the lower end of this, taking out that management 5% of EGI expense, and used a rate of, or rather an amount of $1,109,151. Now, keep in mind, this is dramatically reduced and does not include the management expense that you're going to incur in any property on the open market. Now, I'll cover this quickly with regard to capitalization rate. Certainly two of you have heard this argument before, but I'm not sure if each panel member has, so I'll cover it relatively quickly here. But it is a crucial point and does need to be addressed. If you look at my page 21, I will just run through some of this text quickly. It is recognized that independent living projects include a business component that makes comparison to general market apartment properties somewhat inappropriate. Business component reflects investment on behalf of the owner, and staffing and equipment characteristic of the property would be expected to increase the risk inherent in the investment and should be reflected in a premium over cap rates of more conventional investments. In addition, it must be recognized that the marketplace for independent living universe is much smaller, confined to 75 plus, 70 plus cohort, 60 in some cases, that have the ability to pay the monthly costs that are incurred for staying in a place like this. These factors support the notion of a risk-related premium for cap rate for this asset type. Now, looking at the middle of the page there, in further insight into cap rates for senior housing, we have an valuation, Canadian Property Valuation article, which is the Appraisal Institute of Canada's publication, titled Valuation of Seniors Housing. What this presents is essentially the capitalization rates for individual types of seniors housing over time. What we're showing is not that this is historical, we're not showing what the cap rate should be. What we're showing is the delta between the different types of seniors apartments. So the bottom line is standard market apartment high rise A, then you have seniors housing A above that, and then you have care facilities above that. So you can see the delta between them is in that, call it 2% range between a seniors housing and a standard market apartment. Now, we are looking at assisted living, and it would fall obviously towards the upper end of the range. Now, our exercise is not to value the business, not to value an assisted living entity operating as an assisted living entity. We're valuing the bricks and mortar. So we need to envision it as if this property was going to be sold on the open market as a standard market apartment, but obviously it is not designed as such, doesn't operate as such, and this is also informative. We look at bottom of the page 21, seniors housing and healthcare Canadian cap rate survey, again historical from CB Richard Ellis. They discuss cap rates that they would apply at that time frame for the top end of the market for assisted living in various markets in the city. You can see they're obviously on the high side. More importantly, and more close to the time frame we're looking at, CB Richard Ellis published a Canadian Investor Sentiment Survey for 2023, in which investors were asked about their outlook on seniors housing cap rates for 2023. Only 5% of respondents foresaw no change in cap rates for 2023, with the remainder of respondents seeing between a 0.25 point and a 0.75% basis point increase in cap rates for this asset class. Now, that's seniors housing as a whole, not specific to independent living. So that would encompass 55 plus of market apartments, etc. So 95% of people are saying you're going to see an increase in cap rates. So all of that being said, the remainder of our information is the same as already presented. You have the same market stats regarding sales, same commentary from the main commercial brokerages. One difference that we have is on my page number 25. We have a Cushman and Wakefield chart for the 2023 period of valuation date. So a cap rate range of 6.5% to 7.25% for seniors housing A, and 8% to 9% for seniors housing B. Each figure for Winnipeg is indicated as, well, yeah, those are specific to Winnipeg, those ranges that I stated for you. So that information should be taken into account as well. And we have all of the other commentary that we've already discussed regarding capitalization rate. Essentially, how I like to put it is if you look at two identical properties side by side, built at the same time, everything's equal. The risk that an investor would take on in buying an assisted living facility as a standard market apartment would be significantly greater than buying an operating market apartment immediately adjacent to it. In the interest rate environment that we have as of the valuation date, obviously cap rates are going to be higher, and we have applied a capitalization rate of 6% in our valuation for the subject property. Now, is that high? No, it's really not. If you look at the ranges that we're looking at, 6% is essentially the high end of standard market apartment cap rate ranges as quoted both by ourselves and by market participants. So we are at the upper end of the standard market cap rate range, but not above it. Could we be above it? Yeah, we certainly could, but I don't feel that would necessarily reflect a fair market value. So we have used 6% in our valuation. I've also seen the city use 6% in various nonprofit properties in their valuations as well. Not this one, but others. And this produces our final market value of $23,896,000. Now, we have obviously no value ascribed to the land as we're looking for equitable treatment in the marketplace. Our income, we are in agreement with the city on that. Obviously, the expenses are considerably higher. We're only $70,000 higher, but those are real costs, which gives you the lower NOI. The rest of the brief is simply income and expense statements, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, questions, Mr. Assessor?
Yeah, just a couple. Can we go to page 28? Please. So
Okay.
in regards to this, just so if I'm wrapping my head around what you're saying because if what you're saying is true and these are elderly infirm persons, homes with licenses, and we missed applying a fully taxable component on the land in excess of the legal amount, this property shouldn't be subject to the law. And they should not have to pay what the Municipal Assessment Act says in terms of fully taxable amount. Is that correct? Is that what you're asking the panel to do?
Well, that's how you're framing it. What I have stated in my explanation is that the issue is equity in that you cannot treat one property or various properties, so this is only two, I'm sure there's more out there, differently from another property under the same legislation for assessment purposes. So the property should not be treated on an inequitable basis in comparison to other properties in the marketplace. As far as them being true, well, 2 points. I'm under oath. Second point, I've worked on behalf of Concordia Village, and my father is a resident of Cathedral Manor.
Okay, so if that is the case, we'll be issuing supplementary assessment notices on that property, those properties. And are you aware that there are dozens of properties that have elderly and infirm person home licenses where we have applied the legally required taxable land amount in excess? Are you aware of that?
I haven't gone through each and every situation out there, nor am I aware of everyone that would fall into this category. That's really not my job to go through that exercise. Again, what we're looking at is equitable treatment under this particular legislation.
All right. I just said you just want a summation for this property after. On page 28. Oh, sorry, page 21. I was on page 20. On page 21, you had a talk here and a chart that topped out at 2013 in terms of the valuation of seniors housing and assisted livings. Now, in terms of their development of cap rate, these cap rates would have been calculated with sales that included. Can you confirm that the business income would have been included in the sales as well? Or were they sold to operate as normal market apartments?
Well, the distinction is made there. So you're looking at three trend lines. One is a standard market apartment, not a seniors facility at all. Second is seniors housing A, so that would be standard 55 plus rental accommodation, market accommodation. And then care properties is the third trend line at the top, which would include obviously care and assisted living, where they would include business components. And as I pointed out, we're not valuing the business components, so that's really not what we're looking at. What we're looking at is the delta between standard market apartment and typical seniors rental facility.
Okay, and this chart ends 10 years prior to the reference date we're looking at today, correct?
It does, and I did discuss that and said we're not looking at the cap rates that are shown. What we're looking at is the delta, the difference between a standard market apartment and a seniors housing facility as far as cap rates that are applied.
But for these like assisted living and care properties, like what we're looking at, these cap rates were calculated using the business income. So it's kind of like I don't see the connection there.
Well, the connection is that we're not looking at the care properties. We're looking at the second trend line, which is seniors housing A, which is not assisted living. It's simply 55 plus rental.
Okay, just a summation on this after. Those are our questions. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Moretsky, questions?
So why is assisted living considered higher risk?
Okay, so
Normal
that's
market.
the facility itself. So it's designed as an assisted living center. So the units themselves are designed specifically for seniors. They're typically smaller. They don't have full kitchens. The build out is to accommodate mobility issues, etc. It's not as nice as a typical market apartment, and certainly as a nonprofit, the finishes of these etc. are of a basic long wearing type of nature, not what you would see in typical market apartment these days. Beyond that, you have a very significant amount of common area space that you won't have in a standard market apartment that incurs additional costs, which we've shown in the expense statements for the property, where we're looking at roughly $1.5 million in expenses, maybe a little less than that when we make some deductions, but certainly well over what a standard market apartment would incur. Now, some of that is due to the additional areas that need to be maintained, cleaned, repaired, etc. Beyond that, seniors facilities do typically have greater wear and tear due to, and this is directly discussions with owners of these facilities, due to impacts, etc., with wheelchairs, walkers, etc. They're constantly repainting hallways and units as people move in and out and the damage occurs. So the costs are significantly greater. Beyond that, well, think of the exercise of trying to tenant a facility such as that. As it stands, no renovations, no changes, no adding kitchens. There's dramatically increased risk in taking on a property such as that. Beyond that, you also have the tenants in place. If you were to purchase it, they're in there as assisted living. It's not a market apartment. Your exercise of converting it would be a very long-term process and very costly. So the risk profile is dramatically different. I don't know how to say it any clearer. That's simply the explanation.
Okay, no, that's good. So you don't have a value attached to the 40T per portion of the assessment?
I don't have a value attached to it. When I look at the city's comps and their locations, etc., if you were to apply one, I would suggest it would be significantly lower than what the city is attached to it. But my main point is that you can't have inequitable treatment of properties such as of any property under legislation for assessment, and that is what we've shown in our discussion of this property. So we can't have this property have the rule applied and other properties not have it applied.
So you would like the liability taxation revised then, in that case?
I'm not looking for it. Well,
that seems to be what
we're looking for is equity. I didn't apply for a change in taxation, etc. It is an elderly and infirm person's housing facility, so I don't think that would likely happen.
Okay, no further questions.
Okay, Mr. Kraus.
Just further to the cap rate,
Mhm.
is it safe to assume that yours stops in 2013, that the difference between these cap rates continues up until present day?
Well, that's the theory, and it's not the exact spread, obviously that varies
But
over time, it's the theory
There will be a
behind.
difference.
Yes,
Okay. And does it play any, or does the aging population, like, I mean, I think the way I've understood it is your concern with risk and the higher cap rate is based on selling this, converting it to regular apartments.
well, that's the valuation model that we use for assessment in doing the valuation is view. The city does the exact same thing, we're supposed to value this as a standard market apartment.
Mhm.
Now, that's fine, but you can't ignore the situation of the property itself, so you value it as what would it rent for, what would the expenses be, which we've done. And then you have the situation of the property itself, where it's not a standard market apartment. Nor would it transact as a standard market apartment.
I'm just sort of wondering whether or not the cap rate risk diminishes because you have an aging population, right? Like, I mean, it's sort of,
I see your point.
right, like, I mean, but I guess if you're only looking at it as a market. But like, I mean, you could sell this, theoretically, there's gonna be a market for assisted living. Right? Facilities,
Yes, well, so that's another,
yeah,
that's a whole other issue, and post-COVID and the dramatic stories that we've all seen in the press with regard to assisted living facilities and how they were operated and impacts on the residents, etc. The market for assisted living facilities is quite a bit different post-COVID as well. Than it was indeed prior to it, but with regard to the aging population, well, there is an aging population, but again, we're valuing it as a standard market apartment.
thank you, that's all I had.
Thank you.
Okay, with respect to your argument on the adjustments, are you not inviting us to ignore the clear requirements of the legislation?
So I'm not don't know the best way to put this, other than how I've already stated it, is we're looking for equitable treatment under that legislation, and we see that the assessment department hasn't applied this in all cases out there for the exact same type of facility, so we don't feel that it should be applied in some cases and not in other cases, so our argument is that it shouldn't be applied to us in order to have equity.
But aren't we bound by the legislation? I mean, we don't have the authority to change the legislation.
Well, no, you certainly don't. And I'm not asking you to change the legislation. I don't know what the boundaries of the Board of Revision is with regard to decision, but certainly equity is one of the points of appeal that one can bring before the Board of Revision, and that is what we're doing in this regard. If you look at the points that can be brought forward as far as points of appeal, equity is one of them.
Okay, but on these, I mean, you listed 2 properties, and I don't know how many of this kind there are. Wouldn't these just qualify as an error?
Well, that's not my point, I guess. There are probably others out there. I didn't go through the whole market. It's not my business to do so. I'm simply pointing out that properties can't be treated inequitably under assessment legislation. That's just as straightforward as it can be. And again, equity is one of the points that property can be appealed under.
Okay, thank
Whether they
you.
made a mistake or not, I don't know.
Thank you for that, then. Mr. Assessor, do you wish a summation?
Yeah, just a quick summation on the point in terms of this, what the point you were just touching on. Like if we go back and look and see that we've missed it, and that's a fact, like they're gonna get a supplementary assessment notice. But pointing out another property, say, oh, they missed it there, so now because of equity purposes, the panel needs to rule in contrast to the Municipal Assessment Act. That seems like an illegal thing to do. So I would strongly suggest that the panel leave the 40T taxable in place. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Smith.
No, that's fine. You've heard enough from me, I believe.
All right, so thank you very much, gentlemen. We've now heard all the properties on today's agenda, and this hearing is adjourned.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for your time, everyone.
Thank you. And we'll just take a short break and then come back for our deliberations.